Hello, welcome to another cloud computing class. Today we will learn about Docker, we'll create our first container, and we'll containerize our application. So for the moment I am in the Google Cloud Platform, so it's time to go back to Google, and I will create a new virtual machine to install Docker. So probably you have here your Cloud VM for the first class. We will leave it as it is, or if you like you can delete it. In my case I will just go here, create instance, and create a new virtual machine. Just to remind you how I can be redirected here, you can go to the navigation menu, and here the compute engine and virtual machines, you can be in this window. All right, so virtual machines, you will get redirected to this Google Cloud Platform compute service. All right, so let's click create instance, and I will add here a name. I will call it Docker virtual machine, and it will be in US Central 1. That's fine. I can see the type here, it's E2 medium, 2 CPUs and 4 GB of memory. That's totally okay. I will go down here, scroll down and see the boot disk. So in this case, what I will do is I will click change and I will select here an Ubuntu virtual machine. So Ubuntu on the operating system, and my version it will be 1804 LTS. The size of my disk, I will have a 25 GB. So I increase the size since I will play around with images that usually take some space. It's a good idea to have decent size virtual machine. So click select and then just go down, scroll down and allow the HTTP and the HTTPS traffic. If you want, you can add your key here at this moment here in the security, and you can actually connect from Visual Studio Code as we saw in the first class. For the moment, I will just leave it as it is. I will use the SSH terminal from Google today just to connect and run my command. So click create, and hopefully soon we will have our virtual machine here. So you can see here the Docker VM is created. It will take a minute or so. Now, while I'm waiting, I can also check here. I have lab 5.1. So what I will do today, I will follow the lab steps. And while we are doing things, we'll discuss a little bit more why we are doing these steps. So in step 2, we created the virtual machine. This is the configuration. And then in step 4, I will go from step 4 where I will need actually to install Docker and run the first commands. All right, so let me go back. I can see now my Docker VM is already created. I will click here the SSH button, and this will open this terminal window. So let me just move it around, organize a little bit my space, and just increase the size here. While on the left side I will have the tutorial, on the right side I will have my terminal window. All right, so first step always is to update. So apt-get update, sudo apt-get update my current operating system. This sudo apt update will download all the package information that we need, and then we can actually use this in order to install the Docker. So always update at the beginning. We can clear the screen. You can see here everything is done. That's fine. Just clear your screen. On the top you will see your terminal again, and now I will install Docker. So it's step number 5 here. Sudo apt-get install docker.io. That's the way to install Docker in Ubuntu. You should be prompted for this. Do you want to continue? Yes. Now this yes is manually. We have to put it every time. We'll see how we do this more automatically in the future. So that's fine. This will install Docker. Will download all the necessary packages for me. Okay, so I can just move forward a little bit here on the left side. I'm in step 6 now, and when this is complete, I should be able to interact with Docker and run my first basic commands. So my first command usually is to see if Docker is running, right? I can see now everything is done. I will just clear one more time the screen, and I will say here sudo docker show me the version, and this is the version of the Docker installation that we did in this Ubuntu machine. This is 2010.7. You can install Docker in your own computer if you like, but since it could be a little bit heavy, I will recommend we have it here on this Ubuntu instance. Every time you need to do something, you can create a VM, install Docker, and run your images. Now, for the moment, I can see that this is installed, everything is fine. I can also just double check using this systemctl command the status of Docker, and this will show me actually, it says here active and running, great news. This means that Docker is installed and now Docker also is running and we are ready to go. Now, a couple of things that we need to do always whenever we start a new virtual machine. Obviously, if we create this environment, we don't need to install it again. We just have to go and use it. Now, I will press here Ctrl+C to break this environment. And I will start playing around with Docker now. Let's see what we can do. All right, so let me clear the screen here. One of the most important steps when we install Docker is always to create a new Docker user. This Docker user will have all the permissions to play around with Docker, create images, create containers, run, stop containers. So don't mess around with different users. Let's create a new Docker user and have it always for these tasks. So sudo add user Docker user, and that's fine. The password, just add the password. I will add the user 1234 and then just press enter until the end. Okay, we have the new user ready. This is just a simple user for us, so I will go here on step 9 and I will just add my user to the sudo group, and that's will allow me to run sudo commands as Docker user. All right, that's something essential we need always to do. So let's run this command and add this Docker user into the sudoers group. The second command, it's a little bit similar, that I will have to do here is to create a Docker user that will allow to be sudo user for Docker. This means that whenever you want to run a command as a Docker user, you will not have to actually type sudo as a keyword. So you can say, for example, Docker create something, and you don't have to say sudo docker create something, right? So we just avoid writing sudo and sudo again. Okay, so we created our user, we add the user to the sudoers, we get rid of the sudo keyword every time that we are running a command, and we can move forward now and use Docker. Before we do that, let's change to our Docker user, and as you can see here, I'm just saying switch user to the Docker user, and at the same time navigate to the Docker user home directory. Just add 1234. And I'm already connected as Docker user, and I'm exactly supposedly now to the home Docker user. I can just validate this with a pwd command. And okay, great news. I have my new user that's called Docker user. I have my my Docker installed, just a few small configurations, and that should be fine. Now, if I type here Docker, I should see here the help response. It says how to use Docker, what are the available commands, what are the available options that you can have. All right, so for my case, it seems that everything is fine. Now, the first thing I will do, I will just clear my screen, is to create a new hello world container. All right, so Docker run hello world is the example for us to just validate that our Docker is installed. This, what it will do, it will create a new hello world container that will print in screen hello world. All right, so let's run it. It says here unable to find the image because you don't really have it. So I will need to download it, and it completes this pull request. So find it somewhere online, bring it to me and run it. And the response is here, hello from Docker, right? You can see here it says hello from Docker. That's what the container prints on screen. And that's fine. It's just a simple example for us to see that we can actually create a container here. All right, so that's totally fine. Let's continue. All right, so let's do something more interesting. In my case, what I will do, I want to create a container that is based on Ubuntu operating system. So I will need to find an Ubuntu image, download the image, and create the container using this image. Now think about the images as a compact disk that we used to have before years, right? To have, for example, our things in a compact disk in software, let's say, and then we use this CD in our computer to install a version of this software. Then we can take this CD and put it in another computer and install it one more time. So the image is just this file that is ready for you to install something, while the container is a running instance of this image. So you need first an image, and then you create something running on top of this image that is called container. Now, Docker search Ubuntu will search on this Docker Hub, right? Docker Hub repository to find an Ubuntu image for us. So just press enter here. It will say here that, I found a lot. It's a little bit messy, but what I can see is that maybe if I reduce the size here, let me run it one more time. Okay, let me just increase the size of the window a little bit one more time. All right, now it makes sense. We can see here, just let me increase a little bit, that the first one, image, is called Ubuntu. That's the name. This is the description. This is an Ubuntu Debian-based Linux operating system. That's fine. These are the stars. This means that a lot of people like this and use it. And this is official. All right, that's great. That's exactly what we need. And it's called Ubuntu, as we expected, right? So what I will do, I will say, can you bring me this Ubuntu image to my computer? So Ubuntu, Docker pull Ubuntu. And it will come in a second. Let me increase one more time the size here. And you can see that I downloaded this and I will clear my screen now. All right, so I downloaded an image. All right. Right, so let's see. Docker images. I should have two. One is called Hello World that I just ran at the beginning, and the second is called Ubuntu. Now, again, this Ubuntu, as you can see, is 72.8 megabytes, very light, right? It's a small operating system here for us to use. Okay, so that's fine. I have my Ubuntu image here. So what I can do here, I can say Docker ps all, and this one will show me the running containers. Now, I don't have any running containers. If you remember, I ran the Hello World, and then it stopped. As you can see here, exited, so it stopped. And I have an image, it's called Ubuntu, that I will probably use to create a running instance of this image that is called container. Now, how I will do this? First, I will do this. I will delete this Hello World that is not running, it is there and I don't like it anymore. So I will say Docker remove this one, okay? So just select this, copy this, and paste it here. This is the ID of the container. So to delete a container, we have to use the ID of the container, press enter. Okay, the output is just the ID of the container that you deleted. Now I will create a new running instance of the Ubuntu image. So I will type here Docker run it, and this IT means interactively. That means run it, and I will enter inside the terminal of the Ubuntu that you will see how it looks in a second. And then I will call this mini Ubuntu. All right, I'm here in step number 20. Mini Ubuntu of the Ubuntu image. So we can just press enter here. Okay, it says I couldn't find the mini Ubuntu. Right, I forgot to use here the name. Sorry for that. Just double dash name. So what I say, Docker run interactively an Ubuntu container, and you have to name it, give it a name, mini Ubuntu. All right, let's try one more time. Okay, we created a new container, and actually we didn't just create, we are inside the container now. So imagine we have a small operating system inside my VM that is running on top of the Google Cloud. Okay, that's fine. We are in the container, and we can say, ls. Now this is a totally different file system, different environment. ls, I can see the files, I can say pwd. You are in the home directory, there's nothing here more. Okay, I can say here who am I, and probably will say you are the root. I can see that I'm logged in as root. So every time I create a new container and I enter the container, I enter as root user. It's a super user. All right, that's fine. I will go here on the left side. I will see what is the next step. I say here, okay, let's exit. Okay, exit. And exit means you exit the container at the same time you kill this process. So if you run here Docker ps a, or all is the same more or less, you will see that you created this mini Ubuntu. I see the name on the right side. That is an image Ubuntu. And because you exit, that's it. This container is not running anymore. That's fine. Now, on the left side, you will see more information about the shorthands. For example, you can say dash A or dash all is the same, and dash L for latest, dash S for seeing the containers with the size. You can play around with this and see different ways to extract your containers according to this PS command. that shows you all the running containers, all the containers that are stopped in our case. Right, so what I will do now, I will connect to this container. So I can say here docker execute interactively this mini Ubuntu container and run here this bin bash command. All right, let's give it a go. It says that your container is not running. Yes, since my container is not running, how you expect to connect? All right, so what I will do, I think probably here I should somewhere say in step 23, you need to start your container. So if you want to enter in a container, you need to start the container if the container is stopped. Let's do this. Docker start my mini Ubuntu container. Press enter. Yes. And now I can say execute this bin bash command. That bin bash means enter in the terminal of your container. And now I'm inside the container. Great. So if you see an error that says, the container is not running, well, run your container first. Awesome, that's okay. Now, one thing that to have to remember is that when we see this hash symbol here, we are inside the container. When we see the $, we are in our virtual machine. Now we have two systems to control, so make sure you don't lose yourself. So what I will do now, I will go here and I will say Control C, and then I will press Control D. So combination of Control C and Control D, you exit but you don't stop, and you can actually check it using this command docker psa, and you will see that yes, your Ubuntu image called names Ubuntu container is running for 3 minutes now. Perfect. Okay, that's great. The app means that it's up for 55 seconds, right? So it's like 1 minute that you actually start the run command. What I can do now, I can say docker stop this mini Ubuntu. If I want to stop it, I will run again the same command. I will see that this is now exited. So this means that my container is stopped. And one more thing, I will say, okay, let's remove this. So if I want to delete it, I will use the rm. More or less the same command with Linux. Usually we say rm folder, right? Or a file. And in our case, we can delete also the container. Okay, so just one thing to remember here, if your container is running, you cannot really delete it, but you can force deletion, meaning using this flag here, that's F, you can actually go and force deletion. All right, so what else we can do here? Now we downloaded an Ubuntu image and we create our container. Why we don't create a Python container, let's say? So we can say here, docker search Python. All right, let's press enter. You can see here that we have a lot of Python images available. One is the official, the first one. It's called Python, and it has 7,000 stars. That's very good for us to use. Now, if I want to create a container out of this image, I don't really need to download it. Okay, if I want, I can download it. But if I run the command to build the image, the command will also download the image if it doesn't exist. So it does both things together. So in our case, what I will do, I will just go and directly create a new container out of this image that I don't still have it, but hopefully after running the command, I will have it. All right, so let me clear my screen here. And here on the top, I will say docker run, just to let you know, I'm here in command number 32. All right, so docker run, let me just make it a little bit like that. What is the name of your container? It will be mini Python container. And if you like, you can run it interactively. And this means I will just enter inside the container, right? Into the Python interpreter in my case. Just let's give it a go. Let's see. Okay, I cannot find the image locally. I will have to pull it, and you can see it's just pulling this image. There are a lot of things that I pull. I don't just pull one thing. I pull different libraries and binaries that you probably need to run this. And as you can see, slowly you download this. You can see the size is 196.5. So it's quite big, this image. So it's not like the Ubuntu that was just 70 megabytes. It's bigger, that's fine. And now we have to wait for a minute until you actually build the container out of this image, and then you run it. Okay, let's wait and see. It looks like it will take a minute, and yes, it works. I can see that I'm in my Python interpreter somehow. So I downloaded a Python image. I created a new container called mini Python container. I ran it interactively using this -it, and I enter inside the container, and I am exactly in my Python interpreter. I can say here print hi, right? And this will print hi, okay? And I can continue typing here Python commands, and it should work fine. In my case, I will just type exit, and I will exit from the container, and that should be fine. All right, so I can say here docker psa, and I will see here the container that is called mini Python container, or I can say here all, and the same command. Again, you are exited from this container, so you don't really run out the container. All right, let's try something different. What I will do, I will create a file, I will add a Python command in my file system that I'm now in my virtual machine, and then I will say take this file and run it in the container and give me the output. I can do these things, right? I can pass things into the container and get back the result, so I don't have to enter the container. Right, so let's do this. I will do it with a different way. Usually we create a Pico file, we add the command there, and then we save this. But I can use this one just for doing something different. I can say echo means print, right, in Linux. And here I will put my command for the Python script, right? So hello from mini Python container. That will be my message from Python, and I will save this to a file called test.py. All right, so I save this into a file test.py. Now this is easy when we do one line of text. If you have multiple lines of text, well, it's quite difficult to control. Edit a file and add your text. All right, so let's press enter. I can just ls now to see that I have a test.py, and I can say, okay, why we don't just cut this to see how it looks like? Yeah, it looks fine. Make sure you don't have a typo, you close the parenthesis, everything is fine. Okay, so what I will do now, I will just go to the left side, I will scroll down, and I will take this file and copy the file inside the container and then run it. So, docker, copy my file that is called test.py inside this mini Python container in a folder that is called home. I know that there is a home folder there. Let's add it. Okay, it looks that it's already there now. So let's try to run it and see if it works. Docker execute interactively in this mini Python container. All right, Python, let me just type this, container, Python, home, and just let me move a little bit here, Python, home, just have a typo, test.py. Container is not running. Yes, I didn't start it, so docker start this container. So the name is mini Python container. Okay, I start it, and then let's execute it. All right, it works now. Okay, so I just executed a command from virtual machine to the container, and at the same time I was able to pass some data inside the container. How I did that, I just copied the file inside the container. Don't forget to start the container if you see a message that says the container is not running. Okay, so let's do this. Let's continue and do something more cool this time. Now, somebody can say, okay, should I remember all these commands and all this logic when I create the software, and then I have to go there and create containers and pass the files inside and run it? The answer is no. To do this, what we do, usually we create a Dockerfile. Now, Dockerfile is a set of commands that we need to run. We create the file, we run the file, and all this executed in the idea of steps. So you have step 1, do this, step 2, do this, all right? Let's do this and let's see how actually works. All right, so what I did, I just clear my screen and I'm ready to work with my Dockerfile. I will create a Dockerfile. I will call it Pico Dockerfile with D capital, exactly as you see. And then I will start typing some text here that are my commands for the Dockerfile. So from Ubuntu, latest, that is the tag for the latest version of Ubuntu, run the update command, so apt-get update, and passing Y for whenever you are prompted to say yes or no, you say yes. And remember, when we update, it says at some point, would you like to continue? You press Y and enter. That's exactly what we are doing here, but we do it automatically. Run apt-get install the software. Oops, I have a typo, so make sure you don't have typos here. Software properties common, that is my library that I need for Python, some prerequisites, and then apt-get install this Python 3.7. yes, add your files to a directory that's called app in my case. Okay, so I will add everything in this app directory inside my container. The work directory now, it should be this app. So in reality, it's like I create a new directory called app. I copy everything that is, for example, in my case, the test.py and the Dockerfile that I will create. In this directory, I make it work directory, something like cd space app, enter in the directory, and now I will finally run the command python 3, and the command is test.py. So run this test.py, okay? Make sure you don't have any typos here. That should be okay. As you can see, I left a space after every keyword in the Dockerfile from run at work dir cmd. We need to leave a space. Control S, Control X, and we are ready to go. Now, I will build my new image, and I will have this image that can reuse it as many times as I want. So Docker build this Dockerfile, okay, and some basic configurations here I will discuss in class. Python 3 image. Now, when I press enter here, since I did that before in this VM, it will go very fast. In your case, it will go very slow because it will need to run all these commands. All right. In my case, as I said, it goes very fast. I did that in the past. I have all the images that I need here. Just to demonstrate you here, I have 7 steps. I did 1 step after time. In your case, again, please wait for this to finish. So I follow these steps, and hopefully now I have an image of this Python 3 with a command ready to go. And the command also will run my application that in my case say just hello world. So let's do this. The final step, docker run. I will create here a name. I will call it test python 3 container. Okay. And this will be the container for this particular image. Run it interactively, this mini Python 3 image. I will just run it like that. I expect when I run it to see here hello world from Python. Yes, it works. We just created our first containerized application using the Dockerfile. Following the Dockerfile, we can create a set of steps that we need to follow every time we install some software and we're running something. Alright, so that would be all I think for this short tutorial. We learned how to use Docker, how to install it, how we can actually create images and run containers. Now, in the next class, we'll explore more about Docker. So see you again soon in our next class.